What is going on, everyone? My name is Jason, and this is the iPhone 13. So it's been about 3 months since Apple debuted their latest lineup of iPhones, and I have to admit, the one that I've been least enthused about is the regular iPhone 13. It's definitely the most vanilla out of the four, as it doesn't necessarily stand out in any particular way, nor talked about as much as its other brothers. And it's important to clarify that my description of the iPhone 13 isn't intended to put down the phone in any way or suggest that it's subpar. In fact, much like the very vanilla iPhone 12 before it, the regular 13 is likely going to be the most popular out of the four when it comes to sales. So with that in mind, it kind of begs the question, why is the most boring iPhone 13 the one most people are likely going to end up buying? Well, it turns out that boring in the world of iPhones is actually pretty great. And in that regard, the iPhone 13 may be the most boring iPhone of all time. Now before we get into the review, in case you're new here, I'm Jason. I would really appreciate it if you take a quick second just to press that thumbs up button. It really does help out solo creators like myself get a little bit more traction on their videos, so please help a brother out. And in case you're a tech junkie like me, I make a video like this every single week, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all the reviews. Okay, the first reason why the regular iPhone 13 is boring but great is because of its design. If you were holding your breath for a new look and feel to Apple's newest smartphone, no doubt you were sorely disappointed. And that's because from a physical design standpoint, the iPhone 13 is near identical to last year's iPhone 12. In fact, you need a trained eye to spot the differences even if you're up close, as the changes to the 13 are minor at best. For instance, the camera arrangement on the back is configured diagonally instead of vertically. It's a tad bit thicker, but again, almost impossible to notice with the naked eye. And though Apple did reduce the size of the notorious notch on the display, it really doesn't do anything to mask the fact that the notch is still very much there. The only other way to maybe ID an iPhone 13 is by some of the new color choices. I have mine in their new blue color, which I have to say is pretty nice, but aside from those minor features, the iPhone 13's resemblance to its predecessor is quite uncanny. Now, as boring as that might be, keeping the core components of the physical design may not be a bad thing at all when you really consider how much success the current state has been having. The iPhone 12, when it first debuted this updated look and feel, Apple ended up selling a record-breaking 100 million units in less than 7 months since its launch, making it one of the most successful smartphones to have ever hit the market. With that sort of sales volume, I think it makes a lot of sense for Apple to continue with this form factor and really not try and fix something that clearly isn't broken. And as similar as it is with the older model, I personally still love this design. I'm a huge fan of this right-sized body with that completely flat frame. It totally gives off that industrial design vibe with that dash of sophistication that comes with every Apple device. I'm also a huge fan of the brushed finish on the color-matched aluminum here. It's way less fingerprint and scratch prone than the more expensive stainless steel font on the Pros, and I can understand why some folks prefer this finish over the more expensive models. So as familiar as the iPhone 13 may look and feel, it's a proven design that is still no doubt one of the most premium, well-built phones ever made. Now the second reason why the iPhone 13 is boring but great is because of the under-the-radar improvements that this phone brings to the table. The new 13 is not only strikingly similar with the older 12 when it comes to look and feel, it's also eerily familiar when it comes to the user experience. First, the display on both phones are essentially identical, no real changes in hardware or performance. They're both solid Super Retina XDR OLED panels, clocking in the average 60Hz refresh rate, as well as the same dimensions. When it comes to the operating system, I mean, let's face it, iOS is iOS. The user experience is going to be near identical even if you're still using something like an iPhone 6. Yes, you do get the newest A15 Bionic processor, which no doubt benchmarks higher than any other iPhone to date, including last year's 12. But are you going to notice any differences in speed or be given access to any new and exclusive features? None that I would say are meaningful. So again, that begs the question, why even consider the iPhone 13 if you can still get the iPhone 12 for even cheaper now? So I'll be the first to admit that the incremental changes Apple brought to the 13 to differentiate it from the older model does come off very boring for lack of a better word. But hear me out on this one because they're a lot more important than what it seems. So first of all, these cameras may look the same on the outside, but Apple made some pretty significant upgrades on the inside. The sensors for both the primary wide-angle and ultra-wide cameras have gotten larger, and the main lens is now equipped with Apple's sensor shift technology, something that was once exclusive on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And this is going to come off subjective, but I actually think that there is a noticeable difference when it comes to image quality. The pictures coming out of the iPhone 13 are sharper, particularly when in low light conditions, and you have more latitude with how the images come out with the 13's updated software features. Now, it's nothing that I would say constitutes a night and day difference, but the improvements here are enough where I would deem them significant. And it's something that I feel gets overlooked by many, as it's not a change that you could see by just looking at the phone itself. And that to me also very much applies to the other change the iPhone 13 brings to the table, and that's improved battery life. With the phone looking so similar with the older model, it's easy to assume that battery life is going to be similar as well. And to be frank, the iPhone 12's battery life was actually one of its weak points. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't class leading by any means. So on face value, it could come off that the iPhone 13 would follow suit. But man, that couldn't be further from the truth, and I would say the most noticeable change from a user experience perspective is going to be the gains Apple was able to make on the 13's battery life. Again, they kept it super low key, but Apple actually made the iPhone 13 slightly thicker than the previous model to equip it with a bigger battery, and when paired with the improved efficiency of the A15 Bionic, Apple actually turned this phone into one that has class-leading battery life. I was averaging around 6 hours of screen on time with the iPhone 12 when I was using that phone. I'm averaging around 8 on the new 13. That's extremely meaningful from a user experience standpoint, as I can now easily get through a full day of pretty heavy use if I start my day on a full charge. And it's so refreshing not having any charge anxiety that I have to deal with, especially if I know I'm going to be out all day. Now, let's face it, battery life. Just saying it sounds boring, and I don't blame you if this area of performance is at the bottom of your list when it comes to importance, but we are using our phones more and more every day, and we've all felt the stress that comes when your battery fails on you at the most critical time. Trust me when I say the improvement that the 13 brings in this area is noticeable, and in my opinion, it's the most impactful as well. And that brings me to the last reason why the iPhone 13 is boring but great, and that's because it's not as feature-rich as other flagship devices. For example, you only get a wide-angle and ultra-wide camera on this phone, no telephoto option like most flagships have. You're also stuck with a pretty dated 60Hz refresh rate on the display. Even budget phones have made the switch to higher refresh rates, so that kinda sucks. And even though you all know that I'm a huge advocate for Face ID and don't mind this aspect of the iPhone at all, it does still have the notch at the top. All of this could give off the impression that the iPhone 13 is a pretty basic phone, and I actually think that's kind of true, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. This phone to me really hits the nail on the head in terms of giving users what they care about the most and eliminating everything else. You get the best photo and video quality on any smartphone with the 2 lenses you'll actually use. The iOS user experience on the 60Hz panel has always been buttery smooth, mainly because it's so optimized with the hardware, and even though it is more refined with the ProMotion display, it's not what I would say is a make or break feature by any means. And as much hate as the notch gets, it's really not a big deal as you don't notice it once you actually start using the phone, and it's a small price to pay for what in my opinion is the best biometric security system in any phone. And I think the best way to justify these relatively benign concessions is to focus on the iPhone 13's price. The base model comes in at $799, which makes the 13 more accessible to consumers than other more expensive flagship offerings. And considering that you're not giving up much in terms of value compared to say the iPhone 13 Pro, the iPhone 13 is a fantastic phone at that price. And being called basic to me is a pretty small thing to deal with if you want a rock solid device that's not going to completely break the bank. Now, no doubt, the iPhone 13 Pro, the 13 Pro Max, and even the 13 Mini will be more attention grabbing if you're in the market for an upgrade this year. But don't write off the regular 13 just because it's familiar or doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's a no-frills device that does virtually everything well, and it's a fantastic illustration of why being boring in the smartphone game is actually not a bad thing at all. But hey, that's just me, and I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think about the iPhone 13? Do you think it's as boring as it described it? And if so, is that a good or a bad thing? Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. Okay, that's about it for this review. Don't forget to leave me a thumbs up if you guys found it useful. Again, I'd really appreciate it. Check out these other reviews if you're looking for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one.